FIR is registered or a case is filed. Criminal law is set in motion. Even charge sheet is filed. Now, what next? Let's check out in this video. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello, namaskar, and welcome to Law Charcha. This is how a criminal case life cycle looks like. These are the things which we have discussed till now in the previous videos, and in this video we will be discussing these particular stages in the criminal case life cycle. That is what happens after the charge sheet is filed. After the charge sheet is filed, the court proceeds to frame charge. The accused is informed about all the charges in the court. This is the time when the judge actually indicates to the accused for what charges, that is, for what offenses is he going to be tried. In other words, what are the charges that are going to be proved against him by the prosecution. This procedure of framing of charge is conducted in warrant triable cases only. Furthermore, if a case is warrant triable but the cognizance of which was taken on a private complaint, that means other than an FIR, then the charge is framed after recording of evidence, which is known as evidence before charge. We will discuss the evidence stage in later videos, but in cases where evidence is brought on record before charge, the complainant is asked to examine himself and other witnesses. This is with an intent to ensure that sufficient material is brought on record before the court so that the court can analyze whether there is enough material to frame charge against the accused. In case of cases that proceed on basis of FIR, a full-fledged investigation is done and charge sheet is filed. So the court can analyze the material based on the charge sheet. But in case of the private complaint, the process is issued under section 204 based on the prima facie material that exists in the complaint. Therefore, for framing of charge, the court would require more material than that might exist in the complaint. Probably that is the reason behind the concept of evidence before charge in cases of private warrant triable complaints. But before framing of charge, the accused can challenge the material against him by filing a discharge application. Discharge provisions are contained in 3 different sections in CRPC. Often there is confusion which section to apply to what case. Honestly, even I had committed mistakes while drafting, but then we all learn through mistakes which section to put. This mistake made me prepare this particular chart to make things easier by categorizing the discharge provisions. Let's have a look at the chart. These are the 3 categories and 3 provisions in CRPC with respect to discharge. So, section 227 is applicable in cases triable by Sessions Court. Section 239 is applicable in cases triable by Magistrates Court on police report. Whereas section 245 is applicable in cases triable by Magistrates Court on complaint, that is, cases instituted otherwise than on police report. The first is section 227, this is how it reads. Second is section 239 and third is section 245. You can pause the video if you want to read the section. All these provisions, though applicable in different types of cases and different courts, have common principle when it comes to their applicability. In this regard, reference can be made to observations of Honorable Supreme Court in case of R.S. Nayak versus A.R. Antule. In spite of difference in the language of the three sections, the legal position is that if the trial court is satisfied that a prima facie case is made out, charge has to be framed. These are the observations made by the Honorable Supreme Court. Any court, while discharging an accused, has to ensure that there is no prima facie case made out against the accused. The court, based on the material in the charge sheet in case initiated by police or evidence in form of statement of witnesses in cases of private complaint, has to analyze whether it would be reasonable to proceed with the case against the accused. In this regard, observations of the Honorable Supreme Court in case of State of Bihar versus Ramesh Singh would be worth considering, where the Supreme Court observed that the standard of test and judgment which is to be finally applied before recording of a finding regarding the guilt or otherwise of the accused is not exactly to be applied at the stage of deciding the matter under section 227 or 228 of the code, that is for the appreciation of discharge application. At that stage, the court is not to see whether there is sufficient ground for conviction of the accused. It has to see whether the trial is sure to end in his conviction. So please bear in mind that purpose of provisions of discharge is to ensure that the court is satisfied about the accusations and that the accusations are not some frivolous accusations. In this regard, if you see all the three sections, the phrase "there is no sufficient ground for proceeding" used in section 227, or the phrase "charges against the accused to be groundless" used in section 239, or "no case against the accused has been made out," this phrase used in section 245. All these three phrases primarily suggest or mean that no reasonable person could come to the conclusion that there is a ground whatsoever to sustain the charge or the existence of ingredient of a particular offense against the accused. Like in one of the cases, the Supreme Court found that the ingredients of offense of cheating as defined in section 415 of the IPC, Indian Penal Code, were not made out on the facts of the case. Hence, the Supreme Court upheld the order passed by the Magistrates Court discharging the accused. Now, it must be borne in mind that discharge is not acquittal. It does not bar any court to proceed against the accused again. In a way, the principle of res judicata would not be applicable in discharge cases. This is clarified in section 300 of the Code of Criminal Procedure by way of a separate explanation to that particular section. The underlying principle is very apparent because, as we discussed earlier, that the standard of test and judgment which is to be finally applied before recording of a finding regarding the guilt or otherwise of the accused is not exactly to be applied at the stage of discharge. So obviously, since the parameters of discharging an accused and acquitting an accused are different, the effect of both these possibilities ought to be different, and therefore a person who is discharged and again be prosecuted in future if quality material is found against him is possible. An accused is discharged by way of order of the court and not a final judgment. An important aspect with respect to discharge in case of private complaint, that is under section 245, is the requirement of evidence before charge. This requirement can be captured in the phrase "upon taking all evidence," in subsection 1 of section 245. So the court has to examine the witnesses of the complainant, and the witnesses mean all the witnesses. The magistrate cannot pass an order of discharge until he has examined all the witness of the prosecution in case of the private complaint. This particular aspect was affirmed by the Bombay High Court in case of Yashodabai versus Bhaskar. Though subsection 2 of section 245 gives magistrate the power to discharge an accused even at a previous stage without recording the evidence, this is an exception when the charge, that is the complaint itself, is groundless and no purpose would be achieved in examining the witnesses. But this exception has been strictly provided with a caution where the magistrate has to record reasons. It does not allow the magistrate to use his power arbitrarily, and it can be used only when on face of it the offense itself is not made out. For instance, if there is Mr. A who took rupees 1 lakh from Mr. B and promised to pay back in 5 installments of 20,000 each, and Mr. A is then declared insolvent or becomes bankrupt after third or fourth installment. Mr. B files a complaint of cheating before the magistrate on the ground that Mr. A caused wrongful loss to Mr. B. This cannot sustain, as the dispute, if any, would be civil in nature and no ingredients of cheating could be attributed to Mr. A in the given circumstances. So, in such obvious cases, the magistrate can use his exceptional power under subsection 2 of section 245. But otherwise, the magistrate is expected to first record all the evidence before deciding to discharge an accused. That is, evidence of all the witnesses. Well friends, in earlier part of this video, I told you about the mistake I committed or made with respect to putting incorrect section in an application, in the draft application. The reason why I told you this has some significance, because in one of the cases similar mistake was made in order by a court which while discharging an accused, wherein the section of discharge was put as section 227 instead of section 239. This order was under challenge before Guwahati High Court, which again relied on the judgment of R.S. Nayak versus A.R. Antule, which I referred earlier in this video. The Guwahati High Court, relying on that judgment, held that the order cannot be faulted on the ground that section 227 was mentioned instead of section 239. If the accused doesn't choose to file a discharge application, or he files it and it is rejected, what is the next step? It's framing of charge, which we will see in the upcoming videos. So friends, this is about discharge. If you like this video, please share it with others. Subscribe to my channel Law Charcha for more such discussions. Thanks for watching this video.